welcome to or welcome back to my channel. My name is Celeste. I'm coming to you today with a fall book recommendation based on like books that I think are kind of fall-y, autumny, spooky. They just kind of fit the vibe, in my opinion. So in this video, I want to cover 12 books that I think kind of fit this vibe that I'm going for, but are also books that I haven't like really seen a lot on booktube, just from like what I've noticed like watching people's videos on here. All of these books are books I have read, although I did want to include some books I haven't read that I thought would be fitting too, but I contained myself. So we're just getting books that I have read and enjoyed and think fit the fall season. Let's get into the books. I have my coffee ready. I hope you have a drink or a snack. Yeah, I'm gonna be sipping away on this while we talk about these books. So first up, we actually have a manga. This one is The Summer That Hikaru Died by Moku Rin. I think I butchered that because their name is kind of long, and and I would describe it as somewhat horror, somewhat queer. Also, it has a little bit of queer representation in there. You wouldn't think it would, but it does. It follows Yoshiki and his best friend Hikaru, but Hikaru is not Hikaru. He looks like Hikaru and acts like him, but is not him. Everything at school is seemingly normal, but Yoshiki knows that whoever or whatever this thing is, it is not his best friend. I read the first 3 books of this series, and I think that's all that's out right now. So that's why I binged it. I also thought it was only 3 books, but it's not. I think it's gonna be more. So I read them all in one sitting. I love the art style, the story is pretty interesting too. I like horror, and it's not like super horrific. I think it like delves into some horror type topics, but it's not like scary. It's just kind of, some of it is kind of gross, like the body horror aspect of it. I do think, however, the 3rd book kind of strayed from like the original first 2, like the first 2, like the plots of the first 2 books, like it kind of strayed away from that a little bit, and I'm still like interested to see what's gonna happen, but the 3rd book, it was not my favorite out of all of them, but they were very good. So I'm definitely gonna continue this series when more of them come out. But yeah, Summer That Hikaru Died. Hope this persuades you to pick up this manga. Next up, we have one that is near and dear to my heart. I gave it 5 stars this year. It is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I don't know why her name is so difficult to say. This book made me cry and also put me on an emotional roller coaster. So it follows Tova, who is an older woman, and she works at an aquarium where Marcellus, the octopus, lives. About 30 years ago, her 18-year-old son disappeared, and Marcellus kind of figures out what happens, and he's trying to convey to her what happened, and also kind of helps her see that the future is still bright even though she lost her son. The writing style is beautiful. The characters are very well written. It switches POVs between Tova and Marcellus, and there's like a very distinct difference between both of them. And I really like Tova as a character. I thought she's very stubborn. She's a very stubborn woman, but like she's written so well. Like these characters are like actual people almost. Besides the octopus, who is an octopus. I cannot wait to reread this again. Probably sometimes next year, because I did read it this year. This book is a very recent release, and it is Graveyard Shift by Emma Rio. This author wrote If We Were Villains, which is probably a very beloved novel. This is her novella that was released like last week or something as I'm recording this video. This novella was one of my most anticipated releases this year, and it did not miss one bit. I was not disappointed at all. Graveyard Shift follows 5 late night wanderers as they kind of find themselves in this graveyard because they live like near a campus, so they're not allowed to like smoke on campus, so they go to the graveyard, which is nearby, but obviously not on the premises, so they can smoke. One night they find a grave that is dug up and they're like, what's happening? What is this? Why is it like this? And they are kind of left to solve the mystery. I was reading the reviews of this and one person described it as very Scooby-Doo, which I totally agree with, but like in the best way. They're all 5 very distinct characters and each one contributes to the mystery in some way, and the writing style is very beautiful. I really like Emma Reeves' writing style. And the characters are all very different. They all bring their own thing to the table. And I just really enjoyed this book. I thought it was pretty good. I think one of her strengths is definitely characters, making them so unique and then being able to write them out as unique as they are. Next up we have What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. From what I have seen of this book, I think it's one of the lesser popular T. Kingfisher novels. In my opinion, I think it's very good. I think you'll notice a trend with these books that a lot of them involve mushrooms. I don't know why exactly I like find myself gravitating towards mushrooms, but this one has mushrooms in it. Anyway, the novella follows a former soldier and they receive, they are also non-binary by the way, they go by they, them. They receive a letter from a childhood friend and they go there and find out she is very sick. And they discover lots of mushrooms and fungi around the mansion. It's very dilapidated. And the animals are like possessed and they have to figure out like what's going on. Like her brother is like a mess too, and it's basically just figuring out like what's going on there. It is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling, which I never read, so I don't know like how closely it follows the Edgar Allan Poe story, but I personally really like this one. It is spooky, eerie, and it also includes mushrooms, which is like a trend for me like lately for some reason. Like, is that weird that I'm like gravitating towards mushrooms, or like, I don't know. The next one you should look into a little bit before you pick it up, just because of content and trigger warnings, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This is her debut novel. Like, huh? How did you write this and have it be so good? So it follows 2 timelines. One is when the main character is a teenager as she's going to the school, and she kind of develops a relationship with her English professor, and then the other timeline is when she's an adult and allegations come out that the professor essayed a couple of his students, and it's just now coming out, and he goes to her and he's like, are you gonna stay silent or are you gonna say something? And it's kind of like her journey between whether or not she should say something about it because she thinks that everything was consensual between them, or should she say something and help defend these other women that came out with these allegations. So trigger warning, content warning for like essay, and you know, I think it is a pretty heavy read, but it's also very thought-provoking. Like, I feel like the character is written very realistically. Not that I have gone through something like what she went through. It just kind of delves into a perspective that I feel like a lot of women probably undergo as they're growing up. Yeah. Just be careful about getting into this one just because of the topics that it discusses. This next book is kind of a silly one, but it resonates with me and you'll figure out why in about like 2 seconds. It is Girls and Their Horses by Eliza Jane Brazier. I am a horseback rider, so it connected with me, and also this book was part of a giveaway on Goodreads, and I entered it, and it happened to be the book that I one. And it's like, I ride horses. I ride horses. And out of all the books that I could have gotten in a giveaway, I got the one about horses. Like, what a coincidence, right? Like, wow, that's crazy. Anyway, this follows a family that moves to California, and the mother, I think she rode horses maybe in her youth. But she wants her daughters to get into horseback riding. So they go to a prestigious riding facility, and the youngest daughter starts taking lessons there. And this is a mystery, but we don't figure out exactly what the mystery is until like the very end. So I think the way it was written is actually very interesting, because we're like leading up to what happened, and then we don't find out until the very end like what actually happened throughout this story. So I thought that was interesting. I also thought the horse representation was pretty good too. Like, it was kind of like corny, you know how like horse shows and horse books are, but I mean, I feel like any horse book, movie, TV adaptation is kind of corny like that. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was kind of funny, and it kind of represented me as a horse rider. So yeah. Next up, we have a sci-fi / horror novel, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This book follows a group of women going on an expedition in Area X, which is a part of the world that has been cut off by civilization, and nature has taken back what is rightfully theirs. Let's be real. The group's mission is to explore and record their observations, but also not get contaminated by Area X, because every other expedition before them has either died or gone crazy or died in some way. This book was pretty eerie, pretty creepy. Like, it's not scary, but there were elements of it that were like unsettling. That's like the best way I would describe it. I also really enjoyed how it was written. The narrator, who is unnamed, she just goes by the biologist, is so like different. Like her thinking patterns and like thought processes are like very different. She's very strange, which I think kind of helps her in this book. So I think she is a very interesting character, which helped like develop the story to be interesting as well, especially with what she discovers in Area X. So very good read, you should pick it up. Next we have another release from this year. It is I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. In the description, like on the dust jacket, it says that this book is like comedic, but like in my opinion, like some parts were funny, but also some parts were kind of like sad, but also like touching, somewhat like hopeful. So it follows Jolene at her admin job, and in this job, like she and like everyone else does not really get along. No one really likes each other. So in her emails, she does whatever she needs to write, you know, and then like at the very bottom, she puts it in white eventually, but she like vents about everybody and how terrible they are and how her job sucks and stuff like that. And then one day she gets found out, and then she has to go through HR training, and like they kind of take over her email, IT does, and that kind of like messes it up. And then she is able to see everyone's emails, everyone's messages, private messages, and she kind of like takes advantage of that. But she eventually like learns more about these people and like finds out like what they're actually going through, and it kind of develops that way, and she develops too. She starts off like really bitter, and then she develops in the story, and it's like, it's kind of heartwarming the way she changes and like starts to come into contact with these people. I think she starts out like so pessimistic and so loathing of everyone, then she eventually changes like so much throughout the story. I really recommend this one. Horse by Geraldine Brooks is the next book I'm recommending. It follows 3 timelines. One takes place in the Civil War, one takes place in the 1950s, and the last one takes place in present time. So during the Civil War, it follows the horse that this book is mostly about. He was a racehorse, and then the slave that took care of him. In the 50s, it's about this art collector that discovers a piece of this horse, an art piece of this horse. And then in present day, it's about these 2 researchers who discover the bones of this horse and like figure out what happened to him in the past, like how he came to like eventually die. The book covers a lot of racism, discrimination, and oppression. Honestly, a lot of it was unsatisfying because of the prejudice and injustice towards these characters, but it was written like very beautifully. Like, I really love this author's writing style. And I'm not saying it's unsatisfying in that I didn't like the book. I really enjoyed this book. It's unsatisfying because of the way these people were treated and are treated, and it kind of connects to present day, how people are treated now in our country, in the US. It kind of delves into like injustices that a lot of African Americans face nowadays, and it's just, I'm in school to be a social worker, so social justice is kind of like a big part of that. So this book kind of ground my gears in some ways, but like, she wasn't trying to make it be negative. It just is because of the context of it and the topic. Just the way people are treated, it's terrible. Like, no one should be treated that way. People should be treated with dignity and worth and respect. And I think that's what she was trying to get across. So please pick up this book. I hope you will enjoy it. Next up, we have a middle grade that I read in elementary school and middle school, I believe. And that is The Sisters Grimm by Michael Buckley. It follows 2 sisters, Daphne and Sabrina Grimm. They're kind of like tossed around foster home to foster home until they end up with their grandmother, who they thought previously was dead. Their parents went missing like a long time ago, so they also want to like figure out what happened to them. But yeah, so their grandmother tells them that they are their ancestors were the Brothers Grimm, and the fairy tales they wrote are actually part of a history book. So like, all these things are actually real. And so they end up becoming fairy tale detectives because the town that they live in has all of these fairy tale creatures and people. So they're trying to solve a mystery in this town. And it's really cute. They actually teach you a lot, like word-wise. I think it's because it's meant to be for kids. So like, the younger sister Daphne, she like always is asking Sabrina what a word means, and Sabrina has to tell her, and it's really cute. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one and the series as a whole. In my honest opinion, I don't think this would be a very good fall recommendation video without a Stephen King book. And the one I have chosen is actually, I feel like, a lesser known one, but that is Later by Stephen King. It follows a boy, his name is Jamie. He has these unnatural abilities. He can like, I read it a couple of years ago, so my memory on it is a little foggy, but I think he can see dead people. And this is like somewhat horror, somewhat mystery, thriller. But his mother doesn't want him to tell anybody that he has these abilities. But somehow, I think a detective like figures out that he has these abilities. So a detective tries to utilize this ability from him to pursue a killer who's trying to kill people from beyond the grave. There are some somewhat gory elements in this book, which I think add to the horror aspect of it. Like, the people he sees that are dead are pretty creepy. But yeah, I read this a couple years ago, like I said before, so I think this is a sign that I need to reread it, because I remember it being pretty good, and that makes me want to read it again. The last book on this list is Severance by Lynn Ma. This book is kind of dystopian horror literary fiction-esque, Basically, it follows a woman that works at her job. And the world is kind of coming down around her. And she's like, you know what, I'm just gonna go about my day and continue working because I need to make money so I can live. And yeah, basically it follows her as she is working at her job and the world is falling apart. Her indifference to everything kind of falling apart was like kind of refreshing. Like, her perspective is very different from how I view the world. So I thought that was very interesting. And she's very straightforward, very to the point. I think that's interesting to me. And it kind of helped the plot along. Because not a lot really happens in the book. But like, because she's so different and like the way she views things, I think that really helped the story. The reason for the apocalypse is interesting as well. Like, it's kind of, shit kind of hits the fan in this one. Not that it's like, it's not like life or death, but it is definitely a little eerie, a little unsettling what happens to people in this book. So yeah, that's Severance, Lingma. Yeah, and that will wrap it up. And here we have it, the 12 books I am recommending to you in this fall era. I hope that you end up picking these books and end up liking them as well. If you don't like them, don't come after me, okay? Because, you know, we all have different opinions on things. And these are just books I enjoyed, and I thought maybe you would too. If you have gotten this far into the video, please leave an octopus emoji for remarkably bright creatures, my beloved. And if you feel so inclined, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. I hope to see you soon in another video. Bye.